I flew into LaGuardia on a Tuesday morning because Brooklyn swore this conference would change both our lives. Standing in that glass-walled building near Midtown, watching her lean toward a stranger in a navy blazer, I realized she was right, just not the way she meant. The place hummed with expensive shoes and louder ambitions. Name badges swung from lanyards like tiny trophies. Everyone seemed to know exactly where they belonged. Brooklyn certainly did. She always had. I was scrolling through my phone, half listening to her network, when I caught the tail end of her sentence. "She won't make it," Brooklyn said, tilting her head toward me. Her voice carried that light, amused tone she used when she wanted to sound casual. "She never does." The man glanced at me. Calm eyes. The kind of person who listens more than he speaks. "You're her sister?" he asked. Brooklyn's laugh was soft. "Practiced." Unfortunately. Something inside my chest went tight and then, nothing. Like a circuit breaker flipping off. No heat. No tears. Just this cold, clear silence. I didn't confront her. 6 years of therapy had taught me that engaging only fed the pattern. I pretended my phone was ringing and walked toward the windows. But I felt his eyes follow me across the room. We grew up in Connecticut, the kind of town where everyone waves and gossip moves faster than emergency vehicles. Brooklyn was homecoming court, honor roll, the daughter people stopped my parents to compliment. I was the other one. The quiet one. The one who'd probably bloom later, if at all. I'd stopped waiting to bloom. 2 weeks earlier, I'd submitted a proposal to a private innovation grant. The Hawthorne Fellowship, based in Massachusetts. Competitive enough that I told absolutely no one. Not our parents. Not my closest friend. Definitely not Brooklyn. The grant offered life-changing money and a mentorship program that could actually launch my work. I'd spent 4 months on that application, writing and rewriting until my eyes burned. I didn't want her shadow anywhere near it. This conference wasn't about grants. It was supposed to be safe. Networking. Panel discussions. Generic professional development. Brooklyn insisted we attend together for exposure. I should have known better. An hour crawled by. Then another. The summit broke into smaller sessions. I sat alone in the back of a room about sustainable innovation, pretending to take notes while my thoughts circled back to that coffee station. Why say that to a stranger? Why here? What did she gain? Then my phone actually buzzed. Unknown number, Vanessa Carter. Please step outside conference room C. My hands went cold. I stood up slowly, legs unsteady, and walked out into the hallway. My heart hammered against my ribs. The man in the navy blazer stood outside conference room C. He wasn't alone. A woman with a discreet foundation badge smiled when she saw me approach. And that's when everything I thought I knew about that morning shattered completely. Growing up, Brooklyn didn't just outshine me. She erased me. I was 14 when I spent 3 months building a working water filtration prototype for the regional science fair. Brooklyn was 17, already applying to colleges, too busy to care about my project. Or so I thought. The night before the fair, she asked to help me practice my presentation. I walked her through everything, the mechanics, the research, the applications. She nodded along, asked smart questions, took notes. The next morning, my project board was missing 2 critical diagrams. Brooklyn found them an hour later, crumpled in the trash. Must have fallen, she said, hugging me. Good thing I remember your whole presentation. Want me to help you remake them? I placed third. The judges said my presentation lacked technical depth. Brooklyn's college essay that year was about teaching her younger sister resilience through science. She got into Yale. When I was 17, I wrote a personal essay for a scholarship competition. Poured everything into it, our grandmother's death, finding purpose through loss, turning grief into action. I worked on it for weeks, revising obsessively. I saved it on our shared family computer. Brooklyn's academic advisor at Yale emailed me 2 months later. She'd loved my essay that Brooklyn had shared as a writing sample for a fellowship. Would I be interested in their summer program? I never said anything. Brooklyn apologized, claimed she'd grabbed the wrong file. Said she'd already told them the truth. The advisor never contacted me again. I have 3 more stories like this. 3 documented times where opportunities I'd worked for quietly became hers, or disappeared entirely, or transformed into lessons about my own inadequacy. The pattern was simple: Brooklyn would befriend, extract information, then undermine. Not violently. Never obviously. Just enough to stay golden while keeping me in place. Our parents never saw it. How could they? Brooklyn was thoughtful. Successful. She sent flowers on birthdays and called home twice a week. I was sensitive. Overly competitive. Reading too much into normal sibling dynamics. But standing in that midtown hallway, watching the woman with the foundation badge extend her hand, I understood something clearly. Brooklyn had always known exactly what she was doing. And this time, she'd miscalculated. "Vanessa, I'm Diane Foster," the woman said. "We're with the Hawthorne Fellowship out of Massachusetts." My breath stopped. Hawthorne was the grant. The grant I hadn't told anyone about. The application I'd submitted in secret like some desperate wish thrown into a well. "We had a finalist withdraw this morning," Diane continued. "Your proposal was next in line. We wanted to meet you in person before making our final decision." The man in the navy blazer nodded once. "I'm Marcus Webb. I serve on the selection board." The same man Brooklyn had casually humiliated me in front of 2 hours ago. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. Yes. Of course. Thank you." They led me into conference room C, glass walls, sleek table, New York stretching out behind them like a promise. I sat down, gripping my phone to keep my hands from shaking. Diane opened a folder. My folder. My proposal printed on crisp white paper. "Your work on accessible water purification systems is exceptional," she said. "But we want to understand the person behind the research. Tell us why this matters to you." I thought about lying. Giving them the polished version I'd rehearsed in my head. Instead, I told them the truth. I told them about my grandmother dying from contaminated water during a mission trip. About spending my teenage years obsessing over something I couldn't fix retroactively. About building my first filter at 14 and watching it fail. About building another. And another. I told them about working 3 jobs through college to fund my prototypes because asking my parents meant involving Brooklyn, and involving Brooklyn meant watching my work become hers. Marcus listened without interrupting. Diane took notes. They asked about my 5-year plan. My partnerships. My scalability models. Real questions that assumed I knew what I was talking about, that assumed I had value. I answered. Hands still shaking. Voice gaining strength. When it ended, Diane squeezed my arm. "We'll be in touch within the hour." I walked back toward the main conference hall in a fog. My heart hadn't slowed down. My thoughts were racing too fast to catch. Then I saw them. Brooklyn stood with our parents near the main hall. Mom looked pale and worried. Dad's jaw was set in that way that meant someone was in trouble. Brooklyn's eyes locked on mine. Something flashed across her face, calculation, maybe, or fear, before her expression smoothed into concern. "There you are," she said sharply. "Where have you been?" Before I could answer, Dad spoke. "Why didn't you tell us you were in financial trouble?" The question hit me like cold water. I'm not, I said slowly. What are you talking about? Mom's hand fluttered near her throat. Honey, someone called. They said you've been lying about your credentials. That you're about to be exposed for fraud. The floor tilted. That's not true, I said. Who told you that? Brooklyn crossed her arms. Her face arranged itself into perfect sisterly worry. I overheard people talking by the registration desk. They mentioned your name specifically. Something about falsified documents and a Massachusetts organization investigating you. Massachusetts. Hawthorne. She'd poisoned the well. When did you hear this? I asked. About an hour ago. Brooklyn's eyes were wide and innocent. I've been looking everywhere for you. Mom and Dad were so worried. An hour ago, I was in a meeting, I said quietly. A private meeting. About the allegations? Dad's voice was sharp. No. Brooklyn tilted her head. Then what meeting? You didn't mention any meetings. The trap was elegant. If I explained about Hawthorne now, it would look like damage control. Like I was scrambling to cover up whatever lies Brooklyn had planted. My parents would wonder why I'd kept it secret. Brooklyn would express hurt that I hadn't trusted the family. She'd turned my privacy into evidence of guilt. I opened my mouth to explain anyway, and the conference screens flickered to life. Ladies and gentlemen, an announcer's voice filled the hall. Please join us in the main auditorium for a special acknowledgement. People started moving toward the larger space. Brooklyn's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. We should go, Mom said. But Vanessa, we need to talk about this. After, I said. We walked into the auditorium. Hundreds of people filled the tiered seats. The screens at the front displayed the Hawthorne Fellowship logo, a tree with spreading roots. My stomach dropped. Brooklyn positioned herself next to me. Close enough that I could hear her breathing. Close enough that when she leaned in, only I caught her whisper. Whatever you're planning, it won't work. Diane Foster's face appeared on the screens. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm thrilled to interrupt your networking to share some exciting news from the Hawthorne Fellowship. Brooklyn's hand found my mother's arm. A supportive touch. A sister preparing to comfort the family through scandal. We've just finalized our selection for this year's innovation grant, Diane continued. This recipient stood out not just for the brilliance of her proposal, but for the resilience and integrity behind her work. The screen changed. My name appeared in letters 3 feet tall. Vanessa Carter. The auditorium erupted. Applause crashed over me like a wave. Phones lifted. Strangers turned to look. Mom gasped. Dad's mouth fell open. Brooklyn went absolutely still. And I felt that circuit breaker inside me flip back on, not with heat, but with something colder and infinitely more dangerous. Clarity. Diane's voice continued from the speakers. Vanessa's work on accessible water purification systems demonstrates both technical innovation and a deep commitment to global impact. We're honored to support her vision with full funding and mentorship. The applause grew louder. People I'd never met were smiling at me. A woman in the row ahead gave me a thumbs up. I couldn't move. Marcus Webb stood near the stage, hands clasped in front of him. When our eyes met, he nodded once. Deliberately. The same man who'd watched Brooklyn dismiss me at the coffee station now watched me receive the thing she tried to destroy. Mom grabbed my shoulders. Vanessa? Is this real? I applied 2 months ago, I said. My voice sounded far away. I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want to jinx it. Dad's expression shifted from anger to confusion to something that might have been pride. You got a fellowship? A real one? Full funding, I said. and mentorship from their research team. Brooklyn hadn't moved. Her face had gone smooth and blank, but her hands were clenched at her sides. White knuckles. Nails digging into palms. The screens shifted to show highlights from my proposal. Water filtration diagrams I'd drawn at 2 in the morning. Budget breakdowns. Implementation timelines. Photos of my prototype models. My work. Undeniably mine. People started approaching. Congratulations from strangers. Business cards pressed into my hands. Someone asked if I'd consider speaking on a panel tomorrow. Through it all, Brooklyn stood frozen. Watching her carefully constructed narrative crumble in real time. Mom hugged me. Actually hugged me, tight and fierce. Why didn't you tell us? Because I knew what would happen, I thought. Because Brooklyn always finds a way to make my victories about her losses. I wanted to be sure first, I said instead. Dad shook his head, but he was smiling. We should celebrate. Dinner tonight. Wherever you want. Brooklyn's voice cut through. This is convenient timing. Everyone turned to look at her. What do you mean? Mom asked. Brooklyn's smile was thin. Just that an hour ago, there were serious questions about Vanessa's credentials. And now suddenly she's being celebrated. She looked at me. How did you make this happen so fast? The auditorium had started to empty, but a few people nearby slowed down. Sensing drama. I met Brooklyn's eyes. I didn't make anything happen. I earned it. 2 months ago. Before today. Before whatever story you told Mom and Dad. I told them what I heard. You told them what you invented, I said quietly. You called the foundation yourself. Tried to plant doubt before they could finalize anything. Brooklyn's face flushed. That's insane. Why would I? My phone buzzed. I glanced down. Unknown number, she called us first. Now we need to talk. My stomach went cold, then hot. I looked up at Brooklyn. Her eyes had followed my gaze to my phone. Something flickered across her face. Fear. Who's texting you? She asked. I smiled. It felt strange on my face. Unfamiliar. Someone who records their calls, I said. Brooklyn went very, very still. And I realized, this wasn't over. It was just beginning. The number called me 20 minutes later. I was standing outside the conference center, away from my family, away from Brooklyn's increasingly frantic attempts to control the conversation. The January wind cut through my jacket. Vanessa Carter? A woman's voice. Professional. Careful. Speaking. This is Patricia Ramos from Hawthorne's Verification and Compliance Team. Do you have a few minutes to talk privately? My heart kicked against my ribs. Yes. We received an anonymous tip this morning at approximately 9:45. The caller claimed you'd falsified your academic credentials and fabricated portions of your research data. I closed my eyes. I didn't. We know. Patricia's voice softened slightly. We verified everything within 30 minutes. Your credentials are legitimate. Your research is sound. But here's the thing, Vanessa, we record all incoming calls to our tip line for quality assurance and legal protection. I stopped breathing. The caller wasn't as anonymous as she thought. She used her personal cell phone. And her voice is now on file making demonstrably false accusations intended to damage your reputation and interfere with the selection process. Do you know who it was? I asked. But I already knew. We traced the number to a Brooklyn Carter. Same last name. When we cross-referenced, we found she listed you as her emergency contact on a previous application to one of our sister programs. 3 years ago. Brooklyn had applied to Hawthorne before. And been rejected. Of course she had. What happens now? I asked. Patricia paused. That depends on what you want to happen. We could pursue this as interference with a grant process, which has legal implications. Or we could simply note it in our files and move forward with your fellowship. Can I have a copy of the recording? Another pause. Longer this time. I can send you a transcript of the call, Patricia said carefully. And if you decide to pursue any kind of formal complaint, with us or through other channels, the audio would be available for that process. Send me the transcript, I said. Please. It'll be in your inbox within 10 minutes. Vanessa. For what it's worth, your proposal was exceptional. It would have been selected even if our first choice hadn't withdrawn. You earned this. The words hit harder than I expected. I had to swallow twice before I could speak. Thank you. I hung up and stared at the building. Through the glass walls, I could see Brooklyn talking to our parents. Animated. Explaining. Spinning. My phone chimed. Email from Patricia Ramos. Subject line, confidential, call transcript. I opened it. And there, in cold black text, was every lie Brooklyn had told to destroy me. In her own words. 3 days later, I called a family meeting. Not at a restaurant. Not at some neutral location where Brooklyn could perform for an audience. At our parents' house in Connecticut, in the living room where we'd grown up, where there was nowhere to hide. I arrived early. Set up my laptop. Connected it to the TV. Mom hovered in the doorway. Honey, what's this about? You sounded so serious on the phone. It's important, I said. Can we wait until everyone's here? Dad sat in his usual chair, reading glasses perched on his nose, trying to project calm. But his leg bounced. He knew something was coming. Brooklyn arrived exactly on time. She dressed carefully, a soft sweater, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back. The outfit of someone reasonable and approachable. Someone being unfairly attacked. She looked at my laptop setup and her jaw tightened. What's going on? She asked. Sit down, I said. We all sat. Mom on the couch. Dad in his chair. Brooklyn perched on the ottoman, back straight, hands folded. Ready for battle. I opened a folder on my laptop. 12 years of documentation. I want to show you something, I said. A pattern. The TV screen lit up with a timeline. Dates running from my freshman year of high school to last Tuesday. October 2013, I read. Regional Science Fair. My water filtration prototype. I placed third after my presentation materials went missing the night before. Brooklyn's expression didn't change. That was an accident. December 2016. College scholarship essay. The one that ended up in your advisor's inbox at Yale, credited to you. I already apologized for that. March 2018. Summer research position at MIT. I was shortlisted. You mentioned to the coordinator that I'd had a mental health crisis and might not be stable enough for the program. Mom's head snapped toward Brooklyn. You didn't. That's not what happened, Brooklyn said quickly. I was concerned about her. I thought. I clicked to the next slide. I have the email. The coordinator forwarded it to me later when she realized what you'd done. Want me to read it out loud? Brooklyn's face flushed. You're twisting everything. I clicked through 4 more slides. Each one a documented incident. Each one showing the same pattern, Brooklyn extracting information, then using it to undermine me or claim credit for herself. Dad removed his glasses. Brooklyn, is any of this true? She's being dramatic, Brooklyn said. Siblings compete. That's normal. She's making it sound. I played the recording. Patricia had sent the audio file after all, with a note, in case you need it. Brooklyn's voice filled the room, tinny through the TV speakers but unmistakable. I'm calling about Vanessa Carter's application to the Hawthorne Fellowship. I have concerns about the legitimacy of her credentials. The woman on the other end, what specific concerns? She's fabricated portions of her academic record. I have reason to believe her research data has been falsified. I think you should know before you make any decisions. Silence in the living room. Heavy and suffocating. Mom's hand covered her mouth. Dad stared at Brooklyn like he'd never seen her before. Brooklyn stood up. That's out of context. I was trying to protect the foundation from. From what? I asked quietly. From giving me something you wanted? That's not. You applied to Hawthorne 3 years ago. They rejected you. I found your old application in the online portal. Brooklyn's mouth opened. Closed. No words came. I stood up too. We faced each other across the coffee table. I have one more thing to show them, I said. And then you have 48 hours to tell them yourself, or I will. I pulled up the credit report. Brooklyn's face went white. And I showed our parents the credit card she'd opened in my name. The credit card statement filled the TV screen. Account opened, September 2017. My sophomore year of college. Cardholder name, Vanessa Carter. Authorized user, Brooklyn Carter. Current balance, $8,400. Mom leaned forward, squinting at the screen. I don't understand. Brooklyn opened a credit card in my name, I said. Used my social security number, my address, my information. She's been using it for 7 years. I clicked through the statement history. Small charges, carefully spaced. Coffee shops. Gas stations. Online purchases. Never enough to trigger alerts. Always paid down to minimum balance to avoid collections. Look at the dates, I said. Charges in New Haven when I was in Boston. Charges in Manhattan when I was in Connecticut. She's been careful. Strategic. Brooklyn's voice came out strangled. You don't know what you're talking about. I have the application records, I said. You used my identity. The card company sent me copies when I reported the fraud. Dad stood up slowly. You committed identity theft? Against your own sister? It wasn't like that, Brooklyn said. Her hands were shaking now. It was temporary, I was going to pay it back. When? I asked. After another 7 years? After the interest compounded to 20,000? 30? I always made the payments. You made minimum payments on debt you created in my name. My voice stayed level. Cold. Do you know what this did to my credit score? I got denied for an apartment lease last year. I couldn't understand why. Now I know. Mom was crying silently. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Brooklyn turned to them. I made a mistake. I was young, I was struggling financially, I thought. You thought you could take from me without consequences, I said. Like you always have. I pulled up the final document. The police report I'd filed 2 days ago. I've already reported the identity theft to the authorities, I said. And to the credit bureaus. The investigation is active. Brooklyn's face crumpled. You can't do this to me. I'm your sister. You didn't act like my sister when you tried to destroy my fellowship. You didn't act like my sister when you stole my identity. You didn't act like my sister any of the dozen times you sabotaged me. I never meant. Yes, you did. I closed the laptop. You meant every bit of it. And now you have 48 hours to tell mom and dad everything. Every opportunity you stole. Every lie you told. Every time you used me as a stepping stone. Or what? Brooklyn's voice turned sharp. Defensive. Or I go public, I said simply. I share the recording. The credit fraud. The pattern of sabotage. Every receipt. And I let everyone who thinks you're golden see exactly who you really are. Brooklyn looked at our parents. You can't let her do this. She's trying to ruin my life over mistakes I made years ago. Stop. Dad's voice cut through the room. Quiet but absolute. Just stop talking. Brooklyn's mouth snapped shut. Dad looked at me. What do you want from this, Vanessa? It was the first time in my life he'd asked me that question. Not what was fair. Not what was reasonable. What did I want? I want the truth on record, I said. I want her to acknowledge what she did. And I want her out of my life until she can prove she's changed. That's not fair, Brooklyn whispered. Neither was any of this, I said. Mom wiped her eyes. We need time to process this. You have 48 hours, I said. Same as Brooklyn. I packed up my laptop. Unplugged the cables. My hands were steady. My heart was calm. Brooklyn stood frozen in the middle of the living room. As I walked to the door, she called out, I'm sorry. I stopped. Looked back. Are you sorry you did it? I asked. Or sorry you got caught? She didn't answer. I left. Brooklyn posted on social media that night. Nothing direct. Just vague enough to maintain deniability. Going through something difficult with family right now. It's hard when people you love twist your intentions and refuse to forgive past mistakes. Praying for peace and understanding. The comments flooded in. Support. Sympathy. People calling whoever hurt her toxic and telling her she deserved better. I watched it happen from my apartment, phone in hand, and felt nothing. Then the private messages started arriving. The first came from Zoe Chen, Brooklyn's college roommate. I saw Brooklyn's post. I don't know what's happening with your family, but I thought you should know, she did something similar to me junior year. Stole my internship application and submitted it as her own. I never said anything because I thought no one would believe me. The second was from Marcus Thompson, someone Brooklyn had dated briefly. She told people I was stalking her after we broke up. I almost lost my job. The truth was I'd found out she was using my Netflix account to catfish other guys and I confronted her about it. The third came from Olivia Grant, a woman who'd worked with Brooklyn at her first job. She took credit for my entire project proposal. Presented it to our boss as her own work. When I tried to prove it was mine, she claimed I was jealous and unstable. I ended up quitting. By the end of the night, I had 7 messages. 7 people with 7 versions of the same story. Brooklyn hadn't just done this to me. She'd done it to everyone. I forwarded the messages to my parents. No comment. Just the screenshots. Mom called an hour later. We're cutting her off financially, she said. Her voice was hollow. No more help with rent. No safety net. She needs to stand on her own. Okay, I said. And we owe you an apology. A real one. We should have seen this years ago. Yeah, I said. You should have. The silence stretched between us. Uncomfortable. True. We'd like to take you to dinner, Mom said. When you're ready. Just us. Not Brooklyn. I'll think about it. 2 weeks later, the Hawthorne Fellowship published an announcement in a major innovation journal. My name. My project. My photo. Brooklyn's employers saw it. Someone who'd followed the drama. Someone who'd received one of those private messages about Brooklyn's pattern of taking credit for other people's work. They started asking questions. Within a month, Brooklyn was placed on administrative leave pending an internal review. Her social media went quiet. And I started my fellowship, surrounded by people who believed in my work, who valued my ideas, who saw me as more than just someone's shadow. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I was looking forward. 6 months into the fellowship, Brooklyn texted. Can we talk? Please. I know I don't deserve it. I stared at the message for 3 days before responding. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our cities. Neutral ground. Public space. She looked different. Thinner. Tired. The golden shine had worn off. Thank you for coming, she said. I didn't respond. Brooklyn twisted her cup between her hands. I've been in therapy. Real therapy, 3 times a week. Trying to understand why I did what I did. Good for you. I'm sorry, Vanessa. For everything. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know I mean it. I studied her face. Searching for the calculation. The angle. Maybe it was there. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe I'd never know for sure. I forgive you, I said. Her eyes filled with tears. Really? But I'm done being your safety net. I'm done making excuses for you. I'm done pretending your behavior is normal sibling rivalry. I understand. I just want a chance to rebuild. No financial help. No career favors. If we see each other at family events, we're polite strangers. That's it. Brooklyn's face fell. That's all I get? That's more than you gave me, I said. I stood up. Left money for my coffee on the table. Wait, Brooklyn said. What if I really change? What if I prove I'm different? I looked at her one last time. Then maybe in a few years, we can try again, I said. But until then, I'm protecting myself. I walked out into the sunlight. My phone buzzed with updates from the fellowship. New research data. Project milestones. Opportunities I'd earned. Sometimes the best revenge isn't fire or fury. It's refusing to play the game anymore. Have you ever had to choose yourself over someone you love, even when it hurt?